I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Yugambeh people, the traditional custodians of the land in which I live and work. I would like to extend this respect to their continued connection to the land, water, and community. I extend my respects to elders both past, present, and future, for they hold the memories, traditions, and hopes of Indigenous Australia. I recognise that this land is, was, and always will be traditional First Nation people's land. I would like to acknowledge my privilege, and with this, my lack of true understanding to the oppression brought onto the First Nations people of Australia, with my knowledge and understanding only growing and shifting into that of a sympathetic and appalled bystander through education. My first true exposure to Indigenous culture was through my brother-in-law. His 3 times great-grandfather was William Cooper, an Indigenous political activist and community leader born in the tribal territory of Yorta Yorta, known as the father of NAIDOC. My brother-in-law's great-grandmother, Lorna Gladys Esme Smith, was part of the stolen generation, adopted by a white family after years of abuse. His pride and his ancestral history and Indigenous culture has exposed me to the true extent of political, social, and cultural oppression that First Nations people have experienced and continue to experience. The experience creating this film has exposed me to the sheer lack of Indigenous representation throughout our community. Whilst walking through the streets of Southport and Main Beach for hours, only 2 clear signs of Indigenous acknowledgement were present: a flag at the Southport RSL and a location with Indigenous names displayed on a sign. This is unjust. The Southport Bistro displays images of white folk in advertisements showing the perfect Australian lifestyle, but this deeply saddens me, leaving me feeling disturbed at the fact that this land and life was stolen so maliciously from its rightful owners. This image of the perfect lifestyle has the harsh reality of oppression, violence, kidnapping, economic and social injustice. This display proves how it can be unnoticed how violence, racism, cultural genocide, imperialism, and societal and cultural injustice is inbuilt into our society. How we continue to live and work in an environment and community that is so largely unjust and naive to its past. The need for restorative justice to repair the harm done couldn't be stronger within me after witnessing the clear disregard for Indigenous culture within our supposedly integrated society. Pure injustice is displayed through this social exclusion, stigmatizing discrimination and mistreatment. Through the phases of invasion, the Declaration of Terra Nullius, which remained intact until 1992, free selection and colonial establishment, Indigenous culture has been lost within Westernized society. The fight for human rights on macro, meso, and micro levels within the society must be amplified, with a true understanding of self-determination and the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples needed throughout our education system. And discussing how our surroundings should look if within a just society is difficult, as we should see equal parts of Indigenous and Westernized cultures within our community. In speaking with Indigenous Australians, there is one communal answer when asked this question. To live in peace would be to disregard the past. Acceptance and forgiveness must begin without forgetting what's happened. Westernized education should teach more Black Australian history instead of its focus being on that of the white Australians' accomplishments. We need to teach and learn the accomplishments made before invasion. Through education, we may see a more harmonious community integrating Indigenous and Westernized cultures and not forgetting the past. Upon focusing on First Nations people history, we must also focus on the accomplishments that Indigenous and Western Australians have made together, and with this, the community should follow. Indigenous Australia needs its acknowledgement, recognition, and harmonious integration, and through the proper channels and correct education tactics, we could possibly see this in Australia's future. We cannot disregard oppression, violence, racism, self-determination, human rights, injustice, and invasion, but we can work together to mend the damage made and create a society where Indigenous culture thrives.